Actually, can you just let me know when you start seeing the attendees come in?
Yeah, we have some in now.
Perfect. Good morning, all. We'll just give it a minute or so just for everybody to join, and then we'll get going. Okay, good morning, and welcome to our first in a series of webinars looking into how we model the future, which I think, given the current newsreel topics, seems even more prevalent than when we initially put together the title for the series. So we are recording the session and we'll distribute this out afterwards. But we have the chat function available. Please do use the chat function. We will do our best to get to any questions at the end of the session. If not, we will follow up directly to cover any questions that are raised. So what we're going to cover today at a high level, just a couple of introductions, really why we believe that AI matters for businesses, Oracle's AI services within enterprise performance management, and then we will also be showcasing AI in action, really with an ESG and sustainability use case, but we'll also give a little teaser of how easily this can then be deployed into industry-specific applications, other elements of EPM, having a little look into a professional services and a financial services application. What's really important from our side is that, look, we really do believe in informed decision making, particularly when it comes to what we see as the second most important asset in a business behind its people, its data. So if you like what you hear through today, we are offering a complimentary workshop to really help to look into your business from a data health check, AI and sustainability readiness perspective, and really where those opportunities do exist. So please do feel free to take us up on that after the webinar. So as a quick couple of introductions, my name is Paul Suffield. I'm the CEO at Attest Group. We are a management consultancy that specializes in industry-grounded advisory on how do we help to design simplified data architectures. And that is really about how do we unlock the power of emerging technologies, whether that is artificial intelligence and machine learning, as we're talking about today, whether that's quantum algorithms, computing, or security. And then we have our Attest Partners business, which is our delivery and often sort of re-engineering practice. Joining me on the call today is Andy King, who is the Senior Director of EPM Product Management at Oracle, and Mark Robertson, who is our EPM Practice Director. So just to really sort of frame this, what I wanted to touch on is really around AI services and those business value considerations when organizations are thinking about this. And the challenge with a lot of AI and business services is that it's conversational. And really for us, where the real use case starts to come from when we think about that value is in terms of really the AI agents piece. Because generally there are two approaches that an organization can take, and that is to bring these services in-house and build them out, or to invest into a vendor strategy. And if we look at technology, sort of historically, it's often moved in cycles, moving from sort of best of breed point solutions, depending on the scale of the innovation in technology, through to bringing everything back into a single vendor strategy. And we really believe that from an AI agent perspective, particularly given the development pace of machine learning, and that's before we're even sort of thinking about the conversation around quantum and what that's going to be able to do from a reduced data perspective for faster, more accurate insight. It is really about that significant spend and how then these agents can really execute tasks to start driving that business value. So if we sort of think about where we are today and in the context of those AI agents, it is that ability to execute tasks which can be informed by those large language models, and is essentially sort of thinking about it, the next generation, if you like, of robotic process automation. However, what is really key when looking at that agents and a vendor strategy is about the ability for those agents to communicate together, and that the communication and task execution can be orchestrated and auditable. So it's really starting to help to drive that business value. Critically to that, and because of the pace of development, the R&D spend of the vendors is absolutely key. So that ability to be able to put the funding in place to keep up with the pace of development is really what is starting to separate areas of the market in terms of the depth, breadth, and security of those services. A key piece for us, though, and I think it's starting to be understood a lot more within the market, really sits around data movement. And when we think about data movement, the challenge with that is that many AI solutions, and from my perspective, I'm only really interested in back office in terms of those solutions, is the capabilities to leverage large language models, and often they're leveraging a third-party infrastructure vendor that is often providing that service. So that could be an AWS or an Azure. And what that means is that unless you're paying significant additional costs to bring those services into your own tenant, often that data is being moved out into a centralized, hyper-scaled environment to go and process those queries from the large language models and then bring them back into your environment. Often that is looking at the large language piece, as I mentioned, so that could be your co-pilots and your chat GPTs. But then it opens the point of every time that you're moving data, you're opening up a risk and you're opening a security risk. And from our perspective, an absolutely key consideration has always got to be around that security and the data to ensure that not only are you getting that insight and that ability to execute, but that is being done in a very secure way. And to that point, when we're then thinking about that insight and execution, if we look at those third-party models, then the question really becomes around where was that model trained, and therefore what is the business value that it's going to deliver? And then very importantly, as the AI continues to learn, where is it learning from? And is it just learning over your organization's data, or is it learning over many organizations' data, which can then start to really impact the relevance of the insight that is generated. And the final one, which is obviously a bit of a nod to the subtopic of ESG, is really thinking about sustainability from a cost perspective. And what we mean when we start to think to that is very much around, how is this going to be charged in the future? And how are we using AI within business services? And if it tends to follow the same trend as consumer AI, then actually, it could become a very cost ineffective model if a lot of the requests that are going through those agents are being used to get that level of insight. So those are the considerations really that we think about. And that's really why we sort of went to set up a Attest partners and why we partnered with Oracle. So again, we're looking at this from a back office perspective, and I'll hand it over to Andy in a moment to sort of take you through Oracle from an EPM perspective. But it's looking at that from what is that cost, where is that data movement, but importantly, what is the breadth and depth of those applications and services? Because regardless of the trend of where things are going, you're always going to need that system of record and system of people. And then it is about, where can you really add that value from an AI positioning of that investment of the vendor. So, Andy, with that, I will hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And it's a great introduction. And I think, it leads into our whole strategy around this, not just within EPM, but across our wider applications. And, EPM sits within that Fusion framework. And I think, it's really interesting if we look at, what we're working towards, as you can see on the screen here. And I think it's, what we're trying to build together and look at is, as Paul was describing, people have been looking at taking data out of systems and building agents or building in this intelligence out elsewhere. But think about what has to happen then. If rebuilding all that financial intelligence, if we're aiming more at the finance side, or if it's sustainability, is rebuilding that into that platform. And this is where I think companies have really struggled. So our whole approach here, when we're thinking about employing and deploying these capabilities into our applications, is trying to shortcut that. You've got that financial intelligence. If we're looking at, finance here in this example, cash flow basis, is, we understand that we've done the hard work of bringing together all that data into that finance framework, understanding, again, cash flow management. It's then being able to add on the pieces on top. So this is looking here, and a lot of this capability we'll see actually live in the product in a minute as we start to imagine this together. But things like insights, cash flow forecasting, we've had that in the product for many, many years. But what we're starting to bring in, and as we bring in this agentic type experience, is really trying to connect all these things together. and then bring in that natural language stuff, as Paul was saying. So if you look and think about, how these have evolved, if you think about that more classical AI, predictions and predictive AI patterns, looking at, numbers, we've had that in the platform for over 10 years. Okay, so we've enhanced that and continually built upon that, building that into a much more advanced capability over time. What we saw, 3 years ago with the deployment first of ChatGPT and obviously subsequent large language models is how do we start to use them in our world? And we think of this really as left and right side of brain. Your numbers being the left side of the brain and the work we're doing there, and the verbs and the explainability being the right hand side of the brain. So those coming together, generative AI gives us a real capability within finance and operations to start describe that data, to start to really bring that forward. What we then get into now is the agent stuff that we're working on. A number of them already deployed, but a very, very aggressive roadmap over the next 12 months of deploying more and more agents. So think of these as, beyond just that workflow element. We've been automating stuff with, robotic process automation for years. This is taking this to that next level of these agents working with your teams, helping them to try and deliver those capabilities. So whether it is, things like, account reconciliation is a great example of being able to prepare those reconciliations. Look at a new one that's coming in and saying, actually, this is very similar to another one. So who does assign that? What does it look like? What's the profile of that reconciliation? How should I deploy that out to the team? How do I prepare the reconciliation? Those is a great use case of taking beyond just automating a step, but actually making that into a really refined process within the team. If we then look into, I think, some of the areas that in the middle here under contextual data exploration, we're going to come up with a better name at some point, but we're sort of working through, is all of that bit of giving insights. And this for me is the whole purpose behind, why do we use these systems? Is show me, tell me what's happening in the business and the organization, and then give me some insight that allows me to quickly make those decisions and course correct and or make those changes. And again, think of that with natural language on top. And that's a real game changer for me of being able to go, not just as we can now, here's things, Andy, that you should be looking at, but now actually trying to really give that contextual of what do we do with this and how do we model that going forward. So the agent capability, where this really, I think we have that very unique position, and as Paul had that graphic up just before my slides, is within Oracle, because we are delivering here from the fingertips to the chips, we can control that process with the guardrails that you need as an organization to really say, can we rapidly deploy these agents, deploy them without having to worry extensively about the commercial terms of that because it's deployed under your subscription, and also then thinking about actually making sure that it matters and delivered. We are aiming these to be configurable element, not expecting you to spend hours or weeks or months coding these and writing them. It's about delivering this capability, and it's quite unique and available to you guys. And I say some already available and more coming through this year and beyond. So all about trying to deliver that everything you need. And I think the bit that really excites me as you take that even further forward, we in Oracle and within EPM in particular are going to deploy lots and lots of agents for you to help work across the team. You can choose to deploy them or not. We're delivering these in the Oracle AI Agent Studio. Now, the interesting thing is then that's also available to you as a customer or to partners such as Attest to actually develop and co-develop additional agents on top. And again, because we've taken this approach, it's native and again, built into what we're doing. We're not relying on third parties. We're not having to push out. So what we're seeing here is already, people extending and building agents themselves, but within their guardrails, within their frameworks, within their applications. So the bit that Paul said in his opening of, taking data out, trying to build it in other platforms, whatever that is, great that they may be, you're missing the point of actually all of that piece of being built where it matters in the right place without having to re-engineer those programs. So the way we define this and are looking at this across our agents and our approach to AI, we really see that 2026 really is the year to operationalize this stuff. We've been thinking about it and theorizing in it as organizations for many years. We've deployed parts of this over the last few years already for you to take on, and we really are trying to push organizations this year to start to operationalize. You've maybe spent time looking at other approaches, and we know that in a lot of cases, they're not delivering that value. We see the value here. And the important part is, it's part of as long as you have your enterprise EPM license, you have these capabilities will be made available to you. And that's really powerful. So, I think that was my last slide, Paul. I'm sorry, my brain's gone to mush today.
No, but it was indeed. So,
yeah.
so absolutely with that, Andy, let's hand it over to Mark. Let me stop sharing
Thanks.
so that Mark can show some of this in action.
Cool. Thanks, Andy. Thanks.
Oh, you've muted yourself, Mark. Sorry.
Yeah. Did it automatically though? That's weird. Okay. Can you hear and see me okay?
Yep.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
good.
got you.
Right. So just really a quick run through, basically just to bring to life a bit of what Paul and Andy have been talking about and give you a bit of a journey through EPM and the AI that's available. I'm going to start really way at the start. Like Andy said, there's a lot of this capability has been in the EPM platform for a long time. One of the first was bring your own machine learning, which Paul was mentioning as well. So that's if you have a data science department, you may have. There are many organizations that do, and they run that data science models. We can bring them in, we can map them to specific members within EPM, and then we can start running the models within EPM with EPM data. So it's a step slightly forward from what Andy was just talking about, having everything separated from your entire estate. We can bring those models in, we can run those models, we can see the outputs. So in this example, all I'm going to do here is I'm going to increase my number of advertisements. You can see the multitude of drivers that I have running that is calculating out my product revenue. But by increasing my number of advertisements, that is then running these new variables through the machine learning model and then returning me my new product revenue based on the algorithm that has been set by the data scientist. Yeah. So that's giving you, if you have that capability in your organization today, you can easily bring that in, connect it with your EPM data, and away you go. Yeah. Another, as Andy's mentioned, another major capability is the insights capability within the platform, and that's more around using the data that is already there. Yeah, so highlighting key things, so using that data, that historic data that you have in your system, and allowing you to see any anomalies in your data. Yeah, so if your revenues are dropping off a cliff, if your expenses are shooting to the stratosphere across various intersections of your data, it may take your analysts hours, days to find these intersections of data, but the system's automatically searching for that and presenting it to your users as and when they need it. Yeah, so saving that time in that analysis. It's also saving time in looking at your forecasting. So looking at that forecast variance, are you sandbagging your forecast or your plan? Many people do. And the tool will allow you that visibility to see that consistently over the last 6 months, my forecast has been above my plan. As Andy was mentioning, the additional explainability that comes in is bringing that generative AI. So looking at my data and creating that contextual text to explain everything that's going on this specific intersection of data. What it can also do is summarize a lot of those together. So if you can look at a forecast variance for green servers, I'm amalgamating a lot of those forecast variances, and the AI is providing me with a summarization of multiple variances. Yeah. So just thinking about that in general EPM usage, you have data, you have all your structures there, you have everything in place, you have insights available to you. It is very simple to switch that on to start getting that analysis. Yeah. And again, as a new implementation, it'd be something that would be looking to introduce straight away. So I'm going to move on to the advanced predictions, and that is the latest prediction capability. So basically the bring your own machine learning model. We have those machine learning models already available within EPM. So in this example, I'm using one model, which is the Sarimax. I've got lots of different drivers, that are calculating out my revenue. I've also got down the bottom macroeconomic variables. So starting to bring in drivers from outside the organisation that have an impact on my business. Yeah, but how do we get them? Do we have to type them in? Is it going to be another manual exercise to manage all that? Normally it is. But with EPM, you have the ability, I can go and I can punch out and I can get my external drivers from the sources that we've set up for them. So I've just pulled in the global price of Brent crude for 5 years, my unemployment rates, my personal consumption expenditure index, my inflation rates, all these things that may have an impact on whatever data set I want to calculate. If I want to, I can drill the source. So I can go to, where did I get this data from? So I got this from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, but that's providing me that external information that I can feed in to my plans, my forecasts, whatever it needs to be. What that allows me to do is see my volume output based on all those assumptions and the machine learning algorithm that has been run. And it also adds an additional explainability that allows me that, again, additional context and understanding of the data and the machine learning algorithm that's been applied. Now, I am at a slight, I don't have the latest and greatest version of the EPM environments. There is additional capabilities dropping in here. Andy, I'll just tee you up here.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and just our demo environments are always a slight not in lockstep with our production environments. But so what we've also released towards the end of last year is what we call feature importance engineering. Okay, so in this example that Mark was showing, we've done some predictions of sales volumes. We've used multiple drivers there, both internal, external, as Mark was talking around. What the feature importance does is a second screen here is that's shown on the explainability, is rather than just showing the accuracy here of the overriding forecast, is then actually explaining of the drivers that were used, which was the most important, which had the greatest bearing on predictions. So in this example, it could be industry volumes, wider industry volumes, or it could be GDP rates of the country or inflationary numbers, whatever that may be. And so that starts to really give you that capability to, and I think with all of these things, let's be honest, finance teams especially are very cynical and very risk averse around numbers in these areas. That's the nature of why they're good at what they do. So everything we try and do when we're delivering these is about delivering that explainability, as you can see in the panel here on the right, and then this feature importance engineering. It's all about trying to say, look, this is what is impacting the number, so you can better understand it. What that also allows you to do, if you've poured in 7 or 8 drivers, let's say, to model your volume prediction in the example that Mark's showing you, is understand what the importance are. And it could be that 3 or 4 of the drivers are having a negligible effect. So maybe you want to take those out and try some different drivers, to understand which ones are pushing it. And again, there's no limit to how many drivers you could use, but the realities are is trying to work out which ones are really having that bearing on whatever it is you're trying to predict. Okay. In this example, as I say, volume prediction, it could be attrition rates of your staff. It could be things like around threshold basis of quotas and territories, based on the tenure of your teams. So feature importance engineering has already been released, really, really powerful. And so again, the real big thing here is that this has been built in. We've done the hard work. There is no coding here that you have to start building these things in. If you try to replicate that in another platform, much that you can do it, the amount of work and engineering you'd have to do to be able to develop something along those lines is absolutely huge. So we're trying to make sure that these are in context, in the guardrails, as Paul was saying in his opening, within your framework and within your solution, not an Oracle one or Oracle wide. It's within however you deploy it. So Mark, sorry, I probably went on longer than you expected, but
that's all right. Thanks, Andy. So just getting back to the demo. So we have a whole host of various algorithms being run, a whole host of various outputs across, in this example, it's across products, across markets. And we have then that visibility across that data set. So this is all data that's just automatically run, automatically presented to each and every user as they need it. What it does do is it provides in best case, worst case outputs across any combination of data that you have that allows you to then calculate a fitted value to your forecast and starting to think about, we're moving towards forecast accuracy. Yeah, so a concept that is not quite familiar with a lot of people, because more forecast plans are just done and then you move on to the next one. What we're doing here is allowing the ability to think about your plan or your forecast, but in multiple different outputs. So in this example, you can see this is just my volumes, but you can see all the different volume outputs across all the different algorithms giving me various outputs. Now, we won't know right now which one is more correct than the others, but at least it gives us various different outputs that we can analyze and make our best assumptions on at that point in time. What we can then, sorry, Andy.
Sorry, Mark, I'm interrupting you, but just on that piece, you know, the other piece there is we will be introducing more and additional algorithms all the time. Okay, so again, with all of these modeling type capabilities, is bringing in those different types of algorithms that you can use. So it's all about then trying to find those ones that will fit for the different types of predictions you're doing. So the powerful one here is actually the Auto MLX one, which is, if you think what that is that's using our underlying OCI platform. That you could purchase a technology. We're making that available as your EPM, and that will run all the different algorithms and present back the one that it feels fits best. So we're constantly updating these. There are plans to adding some new ones here in the coming months. So there's going to be lots of different ways. It's trying to find the right algorithm that will work for the different type of prediction that you're doing. Sorry, Mark, to interrupt, but I thought that's
all right. You teed me up nicely. So how do you work out which algorithm is the best one? So, but it's really, you have that analysis of the data, you have that visibility of the data. This is a forecast accuracy screen, and all we're really seeing here is our actuals. We can see our forecast by the different methods of forecasting. So we've got a trend-based method, a driver-based method, the predictive, and then the advanced predictions. But what we can then do by having all this data is we can then work out the forecast accuracy. So how accurate was the forecast to the actual? So we can see from a trend-based method, it was majorly different, but our advanced predictions in this example were a lot closer. Yeah, so now that you've run the forecast predictions, once your actuals come in, it's a very easy variance analysis to then work out which of the methods is best to use. And we'll see some of that as we move in to the next sections. So that was all the theory. Yes, we've talked around the insights, so looking at anomalies, looking at forecast variances. We've talked about bringing your own machine learning. I've talked you through the advanced prediction capability that is there within the EPM platform. Now, that was more from a standardized demo perspective. Now we're really just seeing how we can use that theory, but apply that to various industries. Yeah, so now we're going to jump into the world of ESG. So we're moving away from pounds and dollars and euros and into CO2s and megajoules and nitrous oxide. Yeah, but it's still data. Yeah, we still need to plan it. We still need to analyze it over a number of years. Yeah, so we're using the capabilities within the tool. In ESG, we need to plan for 10, 15, 20 years. Yeah, but we can use the prediction planning capabilities. And again, it's all there ready to use. But again, just using it on a different data set. So in this example, where you're looking at our diesel volume units and kilowatt hours and litres across all our different years and months. We can then see that across our best case, worst case. We can apply a new prediction copied from our best case, worst case, wherever it needs to go. Yeah. So given that visibility to data with all the history that they are filling in the outliers, giving your users the ability to plan right out to FY37 if they need to, but very simply just pasting the data in from the model that's there. Yeah, so that's given them their ESG plan. They multiply the usage against the factors, and out comes the CO2. What they can also have with ESG as well, we have the data set. Yeah, we've got lots of data across lots of different combinations. We can start picking up anomalies off that data straight away. Yeah, so now rather than looking at revenue falling off a cliff, we're noticing that our kilometres for us in the UK have had a major dip. Yeah, we've got the explainability, we've got the insights AI there. All of that all naturally just coming out based on the data set that I have. What we can then do is then start applying some intelligence performance management, so the advanced predictions. Now we're using that as slightly different. Again, it's just a different data set. So we'll go into the advanced prediction and let you see behind the scenes. It is all wizard based. It's running off the data that you have there. So in this example, I'm looking at my scope 1. I'm running an advanced prediction. I can choose my calendar and which data set is, which historical data set is running over, where it's going to predict to. In this example, so if you go back to thinking about my bring your own machine learning, where I was feeding in the various accounts and mapping it to the data that's in EPM, this is all happening here. Yeah, so in this advanced prediction, I'm working out my CO2 based on my usage of litres, my gas, and my various gallons and kilometres. Yeah, so using them as a driver to work out how my CO2 is calculated. What the ML tool does is also prepares your data as well. So any data that you have missing, so whether it's a driver data or an output data, it will fill that in as well. So making sure your data is as prepared as possible, as clean as possible before the predictions are run. What that allows me to do is take my existing, so I've got my GHG by unit of measure. So I've got my various scope 1, 2, and 3 outputs against CO2 across all my different entities. By applying those predictions and analysing those outputs, that means I can then start looking to, say, my scope 1 across. So there's my auto MLX, as Andy was mentioning. We've got our univariants. I've got an XG boost kicking out as well. Yeah, so just using the data sets that's there, but just expanding them out, using the capabilities within the tool to provide that additional analysis. So that was it from an ESG perspective. If I then jump over to financial services, we have standard best practice financial services planning. So using driver-based planning to calculate out your loans and your loan income and your interest income. Now, driver-based capabilities of planning do solve problems in various parts of organisations and can be more accurate than others. And again, that's how you work that out and how we can manage that process with you. With the financial services, I've used those drivers, but I've turned them into advanced predictions. Yeah, so using the same algorithms, but in this, across all the different algorithms, I'm calculating out my loan income. Across 4 different dimensions, a massive data set. Yeah. So using that volume of data that we have within EPM and the predictions that are available, the algorithms that are there, to then kick out even more data sets. We can also use the predictive capabilities to do some stress testing. Yeah, so in banking, they want to do lots of stress testing. So we want to set all our deposits growth to be a negative growth of 3%. We want our mortgages loan balance to grow linearly. We want all our other loans, there's another one, Andy, to grow by 5%. But we can do that with if I open this form, we can do that with the predictive planning that's already there. Yeah, so I can invoke the predictive planning like I did for ESG on diesel and all that. I can do that on my retail deposits. Yeah, and you can see that I've put them all on a minus 3%, and I'm managing that through the predictive capability. So I can put a minus 3% growth curve, and I can change that to whatever I want. Yeah, so I can start working with the tools that are there to apply my assumptions how I want them as a user. And you can see that my mortgages, I've put them on a linear growth, but the rest of my loans, I've got them on a 5% growth rate. And again, that's just by applying, rather than a minus 3%, applying the 5%, away it goes. Yeah, so taking that driver base to the next level and allowing you to manage the data a lot better and to play about with the data a lot more. What that allows me to do combining all that together is I can start getting to the forecast accuracy across all my different GBUs, functions, asset classes, and products. So the same type of style you saw in the theorized advanced predictions, I can see I've got my plan. I've got lots of variances here, which I've not shown my actuals, but I can tell you that this is my percentage plan to actuals. So my year-to-date plan is currently 112% over my actuals. And I've also got my outputs across all my different forecasts. So you can see the different algorithms that have been run, the various outputs that they kick out, and how accurate they are. So in this example, in this data set, the profit algorithm is most accurate. Yeah, and that's giving you that ability to go back and check that across all the different algorithms to then think about what you might use maybe for planning next year. Yeah, or maybe use a couple for planning next year. Think about looking at using that to analyse your bottom-up forecasting plans against a predicted plan. Who's most accurate? Yeah, there's probably some analysis in there to be done. So then just moving that over, I've not just checking for time and moving that over to a legal services department, a legal services solution. So legal services, maybe not quite as advanced prediction level and needing to bring in lots of different drivers, but more as simple, just trying to get that cost base up across various different practice areas. Yeah, so all the different accounts, various different practice areas, really just the ability to set a target or a plan as quickly as possible. So using the predictive planning, you've seen predictive planning a number of times, but using that, I can fully populate out a target or another version across all my different departments, across all my different account lines, quick as a flash. Yeah, so just taking that pain away from that whole manual process of how do I get to my targets? How do I get to a quick output across my different departments in my organisation? This is really the quickest way to do it and giving you the most control across all your data sets. I'm going to stop there. I think, Tony, do we have any questions on the chat or any?
Yeah, there's been a couple that have come through, Mark. We've probably got a couple of minutes to cover off one, which Andy, I'll probably hand over to you, which is around where you're seeing these use cases being adopted within some of the existing customers. But I think just to wrap it before I let Andy talk to that for the last couple of minutes, really what we wanted to show you and hopefully that showcased is, yes, whilst this technology is available across all elements of a platform as it is here in Oracle, it is then about how do you apply that to the specific needs of your organization. So what we then wanted to showcase was how that can look differently for different types of industries or a different process, be that ESG. And obviously in the future, as I mentioned of the series, we'll do a more deep dive into some of these topics. But yeah, Andy, if you could talk quickly for the last couple of minutes before we wrap it up to other use cases that you've seen and where this is adding value.
Yeah, and I think this touches maybe onto the some of the question as well, Paul, that has been raised, which I think is really great, is that what we're seeing is, and this has been a bit of a hockey stick over the last 12 months of really pushing this further forward back to that operationalizing these, and it's the use cases around. Mark was showing some taking an area of the organization, whether it's particular cost lines or particular parts of the organization or products or whatever, and starting to use those predictions and starting to work through those. In addition, it is the looking at those insights and those areas. Agents are still sort of we've deployed some already and they're available, so we're starting to see that uptick of them. So where we've seen the real success is delivering those sort of predictive insights, and then in organizations switch from their more let's say static or more traditional sort of bottom up forecasting, and can they for certain areas deploy more rapidly those prediction models and start to sort of see the value of those. And I think there's a couple of reasons why we're sort of seeing that uptake really taking off over the last 12-18 months. I think there's a couple of things. One is the technology has obviously become much more enhanced and capable. I think also people are looking at sometimes smaller and looking at alternatives to do these and realizing that the amount of work actually involved in those is huge. Of going and buying, looking at something and building something yourself, or looking at very point solution. And in reality, The only time when we pull these data together is in a proper enterprise system, bringing those pieces together. And actually, to get, there's work obviously in deploying these solutions, but the price point of bringing these together and the fact that we can commercially bring all of these capabilities under your, single commercial and technical solution means that driving value out of that is quite rapid in reality, rather than spending months and months and months trying to write things. The bit that Mark showed, I think the most powerful thing is that configuration tool for switching on an advanced prediction. You want to go and write that in a piece of software, whatever the platform is, that will take considerable effort. Whereas we're looking at, yes, okay, you're going to have some work to deploy the solution and bring some data in, but then configuring those additional stuff on top should be, just part of that delivery.
And I think to that point, Andy, as well, sorry, there's another few questions in the chat, and one was really talking about when you start thinking about sort of some of the small and mid-market businesses as well, and how they can look to adopt it. So just as a sort of wrap up, I think this is again part of what we're seeing because of the levels of investment that are going in, is that actually it's bringing the affordability of some of this technology down market, because otherwise to try and do this in-house yourself, whilst yes, there may be a lower cost from a technology and application, but that knowledge, that insight, to build it, to test it, and to then deploy it, and to make sure then that it's adding value, the use cases can take a long time for that deployment to happen, by which point that may not be the most optimum use case for leveraging that particular piece of AI. And that really is the challenge, because it is about identifying where's that business value, where is this actually going to drive efficiency, whether that's helping me scale, whether it's protecting my market position, and really how can I get access to that quickly. And I think that is really where a lot of the embedded AI is starting to see large advancements, is because the vendors are seeing these use cases all the time. So where are those common use cases in things like cash flow predicting, right? Cash is always going to remain king, particularly in the world that we live in at the moment. So it is looking for those opportunities as well, and where they can be deployed. So I think we're coming up to the end of time. So probably to best to wrap it up there. We'll follow up and respond back to the questions that we haven't got a chance to answer. So thank you very much to Andy for joining this. Thank you for Mark for the demonstration, and thank you to you all for joining. And yes, please do remember, feel free to take us up on that sort of follow-up workshop, so we can start to understand a little bit and help your business to see, where's the best place to start if you haven't started already, or how can we help you maybe move that forward. So thank you again for your time, and yes, please do join us for our future series. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.